Hello guys, and welcome to episode 11 in my Godot C# How To series. Today, we're gonna have a look at Hurtbox and Hitbox, and we're basically gonna build a minigame. So I prepared in advance. We got some nice background going on here. We got a cloud dissolving effect for when we kill the enemies. We have an enemy here that looks like this, that's gonna fly on the screen. We got a sword that we're gonna swing on the screen, and we're gonna use an effect for the sword trail as well. And we got some empty folders here we're gonna fill soon. So let's start by creating the spiked fly here. So click here on 2D scene, rename this guy to spiked fly. Right click the node here, click on change type. Let's make this a kinematic body 2D. Click on this guy and click on change. This guy needs a collision shape 2D. Let's add that child node as well. And click on create. Click here on shape. And we can set this to circular shape. Like so. Now let's right click here again and click on add child node and find the animated sprite in here and click on create. Click on frames here, click on new sprite frames, click here again, go down here into the fly. I'm gonna select the first guy and the last guy. We can drag them in here. I'm gonna rename this guy to fly. Okay. Change this guy to be 22 frames per second. And it's gonna be looping. So if we have a look at this guy now and click on playing on, this is the animation this guy has. Alright. Next, we're gonna right click here again and click on add child node. And we're gonna find the sprite. I'm gonna click on create. I'm gonna rename this guy to health points. I'm gonna right click and click on add child node and find the label and click on create. And we can rename this guy to health label. Let's type some text in here, say HP, and let's say it's gonna be 10. So as you can see, this text is really small now. So what you can do is click on the health point sprite here. And I'm gonna click here on transform and set the scale to 3 by 3. And you can see that this guy is scaling up then. And for the label, we're gonna go down here to visibility. And we're gonna click on modulate and make this guy black instead. Press escape to close the box. And we can click on the health points here and we can move this guy up a bit above the sprite like so. We're going to click on the animated sprite and we are going to go down to transform here. And we're going to change the scale of this guy to be 0.5 as well. So it takes less of the screen. I can move the HP down a bit like so. Alright. Now let's go to scene, save scene, go to scenes, enemies, spiked fly. And let's say this guy is spikedfly.tscn and click on save. We can now right click here again on the spiked fly, click on add child node and find the timer and click on create. I'm gonna rename this guy to take damage timer and press on enter. And this guy is gonna have a wait time of 0.15. And we can now right click the spiked fly, click on attach script, make sure it's a C# script. We're gonna save this guy here in the spiked fly folder as spikedfly.tscn. So click on create here. We are going to come back to this guy soon, but for now we can minimize. I'm gonna go here to the shared folder. We're gonna right click the scripts folder, click on new script, and we're gonna call this layers and masks. I'm gonna click on create. And in here we can delete everything. And we're gonna paste the following guy called get collision layer by name. So what we do here is that we loop through all the 32 collision layers. We're talking about these guys here, the 32 layers. And here we get the layer name setting. So we're going to layer names, to the physics, the layer, and then we pass in the I here and we get the string of that. So in here it's project settings. We scroll down here to layer names and to the physics. So these are the guys we are trying to fetch the name of here. Usually I have number 1 as the world, I have this guy as the player, and here I have enemies. And on the 4th one, I usually set hitbox. So we are trying to access the layer names and the 2D physics and get the name of the physics layer here. So make sure you filled in these guys and press on close. Let me check if the layer name is the passed in layer name. And if so, we can return the index here that we found the tiles layer. Otherwise, we're going to print some error to the screen here and some information about where you can find the settings here. And we return 0 if we couldn't find it. All right. So now we're going to make this guy a singleton. Minimize here, and we're going to go to project settings, go to Autoload, click on path, go to scenes, shared, scripts, click on the layers and masks, click on open, and click on add. This is going to be our singleton for finding the collision layer by name. So let's click on close. Next, we're going to create the Hurtbox and the Hitbox. So let's start with the Hitbox. Right click the Hitbox folder, click on new scene, and let's call this Hitbox. Click on 2D scene, right click on the node, click on change type, and find the area 2D, and click on change. And an area 2D needs a collision shape 2D, so let's right click on add child node, and find a collision shape 2D down here, and click on create. Click on shape here, click on use circle shape, and we can now go on scene, save scene. Let's rename the node here to Hitbox. And here on the collision, we're going to set the layer to be 4, but no masks. So how does layers and masks work? You can say that layer is I exist on this layer, and mask is I can collide with these layers. Wherever you want your scene to reside, you choose that here, and down here you set which layers that you can collide with. All right. Next, let's right click the Hitbox, click on attach script, and let's save this as hitbox.cs. Click on create. And in here, we're going to add these two variables. The first one is going to be the damage the hitbox will deliver. And the second one is going to be the vector the attack came from. And in here, we're going to add a method underneath the ready method called setAttackFromVector. This is used to set the attack from vector. And inside of the ready method, we are first going to get the layers and mask singleton. So this is how you do that. You go to root and layers and masks. This guy right here is the same name as the one we have in the Godot editor up here, project settings, and name here, layers and masks. And then we're going to set the collision layer, and that's going to be the layer called Hitbox. And we will set the collision mask here to 0, which means that we are not going to collide with anything. Okay, and let's bring up the editor again. Right click the Hurtbox, click on new scene, and call this Hurtbox. Click on 2D scene, rename this guy to Hurtbox, right click, change type, area 2D, click on change, right click, add child node, collision shape 2D, click on create, and set the shape here to be a new circular shape, right click the Hurtbox, click on attach script, and let's save this as hurtbox.cs, click on create. Alright, we have the script here, but before we do anything else, we are going to create an interface. It's going to minimize here. We're going to go to scripts here. We're going to right click, click on new script, and we're going to call this I take damage.cs. A very convenient name. And this is not going to be a class. This is going to be a public interface I take damage. And the only thing we're going to do in here is to give ourselves a contract that looks like this. Take damage, which is going to take in the damage and the vector where the attack came from. And now we're going to update the spiked fly here. We click on this guy, type in comma here, and we are going to implement the interface I take damage here. And if we hover here, it's going to say spiked fly does not implement the interface member I take damage dot take damage. So we can click here on quick fix and implement the interface. And there we have it. So we can put this guy underneath the ready method here. And we're going to get to this guy in a moment. Now let's go back to the Hurtbox. And inside of the Hurtbox, we're going to add the following. First of all, we're going to get the layers and mask singleton. Then we're going to set the collision layer to be 0, which means that this Hurtbox is not going to be on any layer. But we're going to set the collision mask here to the Hitbox, which means that the Hurtbox can collide with a Hitbox. Then we're going to create the signal here, which is one of the signals we can find on the area 2D. So if we go back to the editor, click on the Hurtbox, go to node, and we can see that we have these signals that we can play around with. And we're going to use the area entered signal here, which is emitted when another area 2D enters this area 2D. All right. And whenever the area entered signal is triggered, we're going to fire the onAreaEntered method here, which is going to look like this. In here, we pass in the hitbox, and this is really handy because we only care about hitboxes and nothing else. So if we pass something else in here, it's going to be null, and then we can just return out of the method. All right. And here's where the beauty comes in. We are looking at the owner. So first of all, what is an owner? We can take the spike fly, for instance. Say we have added the node here for the Hurtbox, then the owner is going to be the root node of the scene here. So in this case, it's going to be the spike fly. So no matter where we put the Hurtbox in here, it's going to look to the owner and it's going to be the root node of the scene. Okay? And what we will do here is to typecast this to an I take damage. And we can do this because the spike fly here is implementing the I take damage interface here, which means that we will have a take damage method on it. So here, the owner is in our case going to be the spike fly, and we are typecasting it to the I take damage, and then we can then call the take damage method on it. All right. So we have now implemented the Hurtbox and the Hitbox. Let's go back to the editor. Now go to the Hurtbox, click on scene, save scene, and we can go to the spike fly here. We can right click and click on instant shell scene and click on the Hurtbox and click on open. So now we have a Hurtbox in here. And we can right click and make this guy local. Click on the collision shape 2D, go to the inspector, and let's make sure that this transform is going to be big enough to cover the size of this guy. This is going to be like 9 and 9. We can give a generous Hurtbox for this guy. All right. So now we set this guy up. Let's create a new scene for our sword. So click on scene, new scene, do the scene, and rename this guy to sword. Right click the sword and click on add shell node and find the node 2D here. And we can just call this parts. Then we can right click on add shell node and find the sprite. We're gonna rename this guy to sword trail. And we're gonna drag in the sword trail.png here as a texture. This is gonna be super big right now. So we're gonna click on the sword, the root node, and we're gonna go here to transform. We're gonna scale this guy down to 0.5 in both axes here, like so. You can right click the parts, click on add shell node. I'm gonna click here on sprite again, click on create. And we can call this sword sprite. And drag in the sword. That's a texture. All right. And we also need to save the hitbox here. We forgot to do that. So right click the sword and click on instant shell scene and find the hitbox and click on open. Now right click the hitbox and click on make local. Click on the 2D shape here. Change this guy to be a new capture shape. And let's make him bigger and broader. Something like that. Click on the sword trail here and let's click here on transform. Minus 92 degrees. And let's move this guy a bit here to the side. And it's going to be hiding behind the sword like this. Okay. Now we're going to create an animation for this guy. So let's right click the sword. Click on add shell node. Find the animation player. Click on animation. Click on new. And let's call this sword attack. Okay, click here on add track. Click on property track. Click on the sword. Click on OK. Click on rotation degrees. Click on open. And we're going to change the length of the animation to be 0.45. And we're going to zoom in. So hold down the control key and the mouse wheel up and down. Here we're going to add a new key. And also change this guy to be 0.01. We're going to right click in here. Click on insert key. Click on this guy. So make sure it's 0.14. I'm going to set the value here to be -40. So if we play now, you can see the sword is going to go backwards to prepare for the attack. Then we're going to right click around here. Click on insert key. Click on this guy, 0.23. And this is going to be 110. And then we're going to go here to around 0.35. Insert key. This is going to be -20. So we're swinging the sword backwards again. And on the final frame, we're going to set the sword to be on 0 again. Let's zoom this guy out a bit and have a look. We can put this to autoplay as well. So this is what it looks like right now. But we're going to offset the sword now so it doesn't swing around the middle. We're also going to make the hitbox here a child of the parts, like so. So when we drag the parts, we're going to move everything. Okay. Let's move this guy up a bit here. And let's try the animation again. Click on animation player and click on play. And we can move this guy up a bit more. So click on the parts. Something like this. Let's click on the animation player and click on play. What we're going to do now is to turn it on and off for the sword trail. So click on add track, click on property track, click on sword trail, click on open, and find the visible flag here. And click on open. Right click in the beginning, click on insert key. And here we're going to make sure that this guy is off. Then right click again here, click on insert key. And at 0.17, we're going to set this to be visible. And we're going to right click here again, insert key. And at 0.24, it's going to be turned off again. We click on play. So it's just going to be a short blink there. And now we need to control the collision shape as well. So click on add track, property track, click on the collision shape 2D for the hitbox and click on OK. And in here, find the disable property and click on open. Right click exactly down here, insert key. Here, it's not going to be disabled. Insert key. At 0.24, it's going to be disabled. And by default, we need to set this guy to be disabled. Okay. So if you now click on autoplay and click on play here. This is the animation we have for swinging the sword. Now, let's go to scene, save scene, go up a folder, another folder, go to items, sword, and save this as sword.tscn, and click on save. Now, right click the sword node here, click on attach script, and save this as sword.tscn here, and click on create. In here, we're going to add these two variables. We're going to have the sword animation player and the sword hitbox. And in the render method, we're going to get these two nodes from the sword. We have the animation player here and also the hitbox. Okay. And we are going to override the input method. And we're going to check if the event is the input event mouse motion event. We create a variable for that guy here. And then we're going to set the position of the sword to be the global position for the mouse. All right. Let me check here if a mouse button is pressed. Then if there's a left one, then we're going to play the sword attack animation here. All right. So let's save the scene here. Control S. Now click on scene, new scene, to the scene. Let's call this guy main. Go to scene, save scene. Let's save this guy in the scenes folder here. It's main. Click on save. Let's right click. Let's insert to shell scene. Find the sword and click on open and click on play. I'm going to click on select current for the main scene. So if you now move the sword around, you can see that it's following the mouse. And if I left click, it's going to swing the sword now. All right, let's close this guy now. Next, let's right click here. I'm going to click on add shell node and type in Sprite. Click on create. Let's call this guy background. Put him up here and let's drag in the sunny clouds background here. This guy as a texture. And now we're going to change some settings as well. So click on product settings. Let's go here to general, scroll down here to window, and let's set this to be 1920 by 1080. So we have full HD. And we also want to be able to scale things here. So on stretch, click on 2D. On aspect ratio, you can click on keep and click on close. And for the background, we don't want this to be centered. We want it to start up here in the corner, like so. And if we open up the source script again, so here we have the hitbox. And on the hitbox, we had the method set attack from vector. And this is where we plug in the position of the sword. And we're going to say minus a vector 2 for 200. And this is because the sword is offset. So what we're doing basically is saying, hey, we want this sword to be like this as a center point instead for when we are hitting the enemies. All right, let's go to main again. Let's right click the main node, click on attach script, and let's call this main.cs here. Here at the top, you're going to have these three variables. We're going to have the packed scene for the spike flag. We're going to have a timer called spawn timer. We're going to have a random generator here as well. So let's add the spawn timer now. Right click the main node, click on add shell node, click on the timer, click on create, and let's call this guy spawn timer. We can set him to 2 or something. We're going to change this in code anyway. And bring up the code again. Inside of the render method, We're going to hide the mouse when it's on the window. We will initialize the random number generator. We're going to get the spawn timer node. And we're going to load the spiked fly here as a packed scene so that we can instance it. And then we're going to spawn a spiked fly here. And this method looks like this. So here, we randomize a Y position from the random range of 100 to 1000. And then we instance a spiked fly here. And we set the spiked fly position here to start at 2000 just outside of the screen and at the randomized Y position. And then we add it as a child to the main scene. Alright. Now let's go back to the editor. Make sure the spawn timer is selected. Click on node. Double click the timeout method. Rename this to a bit more C# standard. Select all the text. Right click. Copy. And we're going to connect this to the main script here. So click connect. And then here we're going to say private void and paste this guy in. So whenever the timer has timed out, we're going to spawn a new spiked fly. And we're going to set the wait time here to be a random range between 1 and 4 seconds. Let's minimize and let's click on play. As you can see, it's spawning there, but it's not moving. And we get some errors because we have not finished the implementation of the spiked fly. Let's open up the script for the spiked fly. And then here we're going to have a bunch of variables. We have the health. We have its spiked fly speed. We have the take damage timer here. We have its velocity. We have a knockback vector. We have the label for the health points above him. We have an animated sprite for the cloud depth effect. We have a boolean to keep track of if it's dead or not. Then we have the last cloud depth frame here. So let's add this guy now. Cloud depth effect. Click here on the spiked fly tab. Right click the spiked fly node. Click on that child node. And find the animated sprite here. And click on create. And we need to rename this guy to cloud depth effect. I can put him up here. Click on the inspector, click on frames, new sprite frames, click here again, and rename this guy to dissolve. Click on add frames from a sprite sheet, go to assets, cloud dissolve, click on this guy, and click on open. Vertically we have 1, and horizontally we have 5 frames. I'm going to select all the frames, I'm going to click on add 5 frames. I'm going to click here again and add an extra frame at the end, like so. And this guy is going to be at 15 FPS. We click on the cloud depth effect here, and we're going to go down here to transform, and we're going to set the scale to be 5 by 5, like so. If you click on play in here, the animation looks like this. Alright, and this is not going to be visible by default. Now let's go back to the code. And inside of the random method, we're going to get the take damage timer. We're going to get the health points label. We're going to get the cloud depth effect here. And we're going to set the health points text here to be HP plus its current health. And we're going to get the last cloud depth frame here. So we do that by going to cloud depth effect here, dot frames, and get frame count for the dissolve animation -1. So this guy is going to return 6 because we have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 frames here. But we need to say -1 because in code it starts to count at 0. Okay? That is why we have -1 here. And then we're going to have our take damage method updated. Select this guy and paste the following. Here we decrease the health of the spiked fly with the incoming damage here. When we update the health points text here with its new health, and if the health is below or equal to 0 and is not dead, then we're going to flag that it's now dead, and we're going to remove the visibility for the animated sprite node, which is the spiked fly itself. Then we're going to enable the cloud depth effect to be visible so we can see the effect. And then we're going to play the cloud depth effect here. Otherwise, if it's still alive and the attack vector isn't null, then we're going to get the angle here from the attack, and we do that by taking this position for the spiked fly, and we use the built-in angle2 method, and we pass in the attack from vector here, and we typecast this to a regular vector because this is a nullable vector. But this guy doesn't take in nullable vectors, just a regular one. Okay? Then we calculate the direction that the attack came from. And to do this, you take the cosinus of the angle for the x position and sinus the angle for the y position here. And then you will get the direction. Then we set the velocity here to the direction and we multiply that with 200. Because in here we are using the move and slide method, which internally is using the delta. Okay. Then we set the color here to magenta for the sprite when it's getting hit. And here we start to take damage timer. And when the timer has finished, we will reset the color to normal for the sprite. And now finally, we're going to update the process method down here. And we're going to check if the sprite is dead and the final frame of the death cloud animation has played. So this is why we have the lost cloud death frame. And when the lost frame is played, we're going to free the sprite from memory. And we can also add a return here. Otherwise, we're going to check here if the y velocity isn't 0, then we're going to lerp the position back to 0. Then we check if the speed of the sprite isn't at its normal value. That means that the sprite has just gotten knockback here. Then we're going to move the speed back towards its normal value here. And it's always going to be negative because they're always flying to the left. Here we check if the sprite still has health, if it's alive. Then we're going to run the built-in move and slide method to move the sprite with physics here. Alright. And this little code here is the knockback code. Type in knockback here. Alright, so let's minimize and let's click on play. Here comes the first guy. And you can see we have not set up the timer properly. So let's go here to the take damage timer. And set this guy to be one shot. And also go here to node and click on timeout. And we need to attach the on take damage timer timeout here to the spike fly. So click on connect here. Let's save, minimize, and click on play. There's a lot of health on this guy. But we're not playing the cloud depth effect animation. So let's fix that. Select the cloud depth effect, remove play here, and set this to 0. And make sure it's not visible here. Okay. And now if we click on play, we can kill this guy. And we should have a nice effect as well. The effect works. And now, finally, we need to go to the main scene here. Make sure that the spawn timer is working properly here. So click on the spawn timer and click on auto start here. Save and click on play. Now we get a load of enemies on the screen here. And I think the HP is a bit too much on them, so we can half their HP. Otherwise, it's going to be like a million guys on the screen real quickly. Let's click on close here. Let's go here to the spike fly. Click on the spike fly up here. Set health to 5. And we can speed them up a bit as well. It's like 350. And let's click on play. And that feels better. It's more fast paced now. As always, you will find the link to my GitHub page with the source code in the description. Alright. So we have now built ourselves an eternal game where you slash the flying guys on the screen. Okay, let's close this guy down. And of course, we gotta go here to the animated sprite and click on playing here, so we will have the animation going. And click on play. Now they're flapping their wings as well. Alright. So thank you guys for watching. I hope you learned something. Please like, subscribe, hit the notification bell, and see you in the next video. Bye for now.